players have already resolved the mulligans. I'm hearing that Medvec is on 5 cards, Whitehouse is on 6. And the Dredge deck is certainly a deck that mulligans a bit better than the Eldrazi deck.
Yeah, I'm also curious to see how well the Dredge decks can mulligan now that the London rule is in effect.
Whitehouse on the play, Copperline Gorge into Shriekhorn. We'll see what Medvec can do about it. Here's
That's
turn
gas.
1, Chalice of the Void, Ghost Quarter, Simian Spirit Guide. Didn't stop the Shriekhorn. We'll see what Whitehouse can do with that. Ooh, and he does flip over a Stinkweed Imp on the first activation.
Yeah, hitting the Stinkweed Imp's a huge deal, but if he has something like Faithless Looting in hand or finds a Faithless Looting off of the Dredge, he can no longer use it thanks to that Chalice of the Void.
He'll dredge for his draw step, has that Shriekhorn on tap yet, finds a Conflagrate and a Bloodghast off of the Dredge. Put that Stinkweed Imp into his hand.
And the common thing in modern Dredge is to kind of separate your cards by things in the graveyard that matter versus things in the graveyard that don't matter, just so that both players can see them quite easily. There are no Order of Graveyard Matters cards in Modern like you see in Legacy.
We'll see if there's something like a Cathartic Reunion on turn 2. As you mentioned, the Faithless Looting is no good here because of that Chalice.
Yeah, but if he does have Cathartic, though, he can go pretty nuts here.
Shriekhorn activation. He'll flip over a Faithless Looting and a Cathartic Reunion. Won't be able to flash back that looting through the Chalice. So here's Bloodstained Mire's land for turn. Bloodghast will come back. He's going to sacrifice the fetch land. We'll see if it's a Reunion or perhaps a Life from the Loam.
Yeah, and if it's Life from the Loam with that Conflagrate in the graveyard, that could be a lot of trouble for Medvec.
There's a lot of pressure for the Eldrazi deck to get on the table really quickly in this matchup, certainly in a Game 1 situation.
Right, but this, even if he's not able to get on the board on turn 2, like, this is a lot to deal with on turn 2.
Right. Right, there's a tap of the 2 mana.
Oh, there's Cathartic. This game might actually be over here on turn 2.
Yeah, Cathartic Reunion discards Life from the Loam and Stinkweed Imp, so he'll be dredging at least 8. Here's the first 5. Finds a Creeping Chill, an Amalgam, Golgari Thug, and a Narcomoeba, but that's a lot of hits. Second dredge will be Golgari Thug. 4 more cards to the graveyard. Another Narcomoeba, another Prized Amalgam, and a third Prized Amalgam. Yeah, as you said, this game may very well already be over.
Huh. Cool. You banned the wrong one!
Right. I thought we just banned graveyard decks.
You banned the wrong one!
Dredge Life from the Loam. All right, no more action there, but the damage is already done. Whitehouse getting a ton of value off of this Reunion.
Yeah, and this Eldrazi deck is not equipped to deal with this much pressure this early. You're going to see that Creeping Chill drain for 3. You're going to see 2 Narcomoebas enter the battlefield, and then at the end of turn, you're going to see 3 Prized Amalgams enter the battlefield. So on turn 2 here, we have 9, 10, 11, 13 power, a drain for 3, and a Conflagrate and a Life from the Loam in the graveyard with a handful of 3 cards.
So you see the Chill putting Medvec to 17, Whitehouse up to 22. Medvec will consult the graveyard. Going to see if maybe there's any information. The Dredge deck is kind of in between stock lists right now. You don't know if your opponent might have Hogak, things like that.
Yeah, I think Old School is going to be a little bit better here at the very least to start off with. There might end up being a version that can play Hogak, but I'd be looking more forward to decks that play like Vengevine still to be playing Hogak. Decks that play with the graveyard just a little bit, but not too much, and can either cast Hogak from the graveyard or cast it from hand. And that usually requires being able to cast a couple of cheap creatures.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And Whitehouse has a lot of experience with the stock Dredge deck leading up to Modern Horizons as well.
Oh, absolutely. He's been playing it for forever. And it's been good for forever. You know, ever since Ross Merrim won an Open with the Golgari Grave Troll Field version, like back in 2015 or 2016, it's basically been one of the big boogeymen of the format. Even after the Bridge from Below ban, or sorry, even after the Golgari Grave Troll ban, it took a little while for it to catch back up. But once Creeping Chill was printed last year, like it just became nuts. You know, you really gave it the boost it needed. It allowed you to just burn people out.
Yeah, definitely. And you see Tom Medvec got to play 1 turn of that game, and we're going to sideboards.
He could have chosen to play the second turn.
Maybe even a third as he got attacked for lethal.
Just want to point out, if he had Rest in Peace there,
would have been too slow.
Too slow. Would have needed that Spirit Guide plus Rest in Peace.
Yeah, Spirit Guide Rest in Peace could be a difference maker in this matchup as we see
sure.
Medvec reach for the sideboard. 4 Takali Honor Guard, 3 of those Rest in Peace. 2 Disenchants, not really the iconic art, but that's what the card is. 2 Karn Sign of Urza, 2 Stony Silence, and 2 Worship.
So I'd have to read Tocatli Honor Guard to double check if it works. I'm not sure if Tocatli Honor Guard stops Prized Amalgam from coming back or not. Regardless, we don't see a whole lot of Tocatli Honor Guards in Modern, so a curious one at the very least to maybe take a look at that after when I get a second. Rest in Peace definitely coming in. That card is going to be your anti-graveyard card of choice when you're playing white to basically just hammer home against these graveyard-related decks. Other than that, though, maybe Worship, because Worship can protect you for a few turns, but it doesn't get through Creeping Chill. So I think just the 3 Rest in Peace only.
All right, and then on Whitehouse's side, we have 1 copy of Shenanigans, a Leyline of Sanctity, a Dark Blast, an Ancient Grudge, an Abrupt Decay, 3 Lightning Axe, 3 Land of the Void, and 4 Nature's Claim.
So if you're Whitehouse, I think you're going to assume that your opponent is playing Colorless Eldrazi unless you know exactly what he's playing, because all you saw was Ghost Quarter, Sigmund Spirit Guide, Chalice of the Void. So you want to bring in things that can pop Chalice of the Void specifically. I think Ancient Grudge is going to be pretty good. Lava Axe, all 3 of those should, or Lightning Axe, all 3 of those should come in. And the Abrupt Decay. Don't really need stuff like Leyline or Nature's Claims. Nature's Claim normally would be okay in the style of matchup, but Chalice of the Void knocks those all by itself, and that's one of the primary targets for those disenchant effects. And then maybe Shenanigans if you just want some kind of repeatable answer to those artifacts. And now if he does think Medvec is playing Colorless Eldrazi, chances are he is going to be thinking more along the lines of Grafdigger's Cage and even like Relic of Progenitus as opposed to Rest in Peace.
So we got a sale going on over at StarCityGames.com like we do every week. Thousands of cards on sale through Monday, every Monday. You see HP cards, some well-loved Magic the Gathering cards you're going to see on sale.
AKA my entire collection.
These are my favorite cards to pick up for Cube. I like it when they pick them up. You see that Emrakul the Aeon's Torn with like the practically white
whiting,
border?
yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, same. If you go to go.starcitygames.com/sale, you can check out all these HP cards. There's literally thousands of them on sale. Also, make sure to follow Ben Blyweiss on Twitter. He does a promotion every week.
Get this off my desk. Yeah.
And he's just trying to get rid of a bunch of these cool HP cards that they have. Sometimes you'll find cards that have signatures on them. Sometimes you'll find cards that have stamps from the Pro Tour on them. There's a lot of really nice goodies there on our HP sale, as well as what Ben Blyweiss does from his desk.
He had a Get This Off My Desk a couple weeks ago. That was for a lot of Candelabra of Thanos.
Oh, yeah. I know. I actually follow the person who bought all of them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was Liz.
It was like 12 or 16 of them?
Oh, well, Liz bought a playset, I think.
Okay. I was thinking about buying one. They were pretty steep, but
you can't just buy one.
I want it for Cube.
Sure.
I'm not going to play High Tide in a constructed deck. It's 2019.
Well, I mean, I just say do whatever you want in Legacy, man.
That is true. I've been doing whatever I want in Legacy. I've been playing that Land Grand Arclight Phoenix deck.
Oh, yeah.
It's gas. It's so fun.
Did you see any of my articles on it or anything? Did you check those out on StarCityGames.com back in the day?
I did.
Nice.
I remember covering the tournament when we first saw that deck break out. Immediately, we were both kind of floored.
Yeah, love it.
Really cool deck building on that one.
This guy's super smart.
Yeah, I would never have come up with that on my own.
It's like Medvec's going to toss it back. So is Whitehouse. Both players going to 6 here, but I think that certainly favors Whitehouse in the long term.
This is an interesting matchup to talk about in terms of the London Mulligan. The Eldrazi deck was a deck, if you go back a few years when Oath of the Gatewatch first hit, this deck dominated Modern. A big part of it was the Eye of Ugin being in the deck. That card's now banned, as well as Eldrazi Temple, and the deck's ability to mulligan into busted hands as long as you had one of those lands. Now, because Eldrazi Temple is still legal, because the deck has such high-impact spells like Thought-Knot Seer, the deck still mulligans reasonably, but probably not as good as a deck like Dredge does.
Yeah, but in this type of a matchup, the mono white Eldrazi deck can't really function in the same manner as the Dredge deck. As far as hitting the battlefield running is concerned, they can have some decent draws with like a turn 1 Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, or Chalice of the Void or something and slow the opponent down. But unfortunately, the game plan is just not up to snuff when it comes to the Dredge deck. And you need one of those anti-graveyard decks or one of those fast Chalice or Thalia, Guardian of Thraben draws. Now, if he has that on turn 2 on the play, or even turn 1 on the play, I think that's a keeper. But any other hand is likely just going to be a little bit too slow, and he's going to be tossing it back.
Yeah, more looks at Simian Spirit Guide. Rest in peace, though, is definitely a nice spot to be in.
Oh, for sure.
See if players can keep on 6. Remember, Medvec was on 5 cards in Game 1. The one-turn Game 1.
Well, it was 2. It was 2 turns. He chose not to play second turn.
Sure. He chose.
Oh, man. I really hope we don't see Dredge every round. But I kind of also hope that we do see Dredge every round.
Go on.
I mean, I just want, I think Faithless Looting should get banned. I'm just going to come out and say it. It took me a little while to really get on board with it because I like playing Phoenix so much. But the more I think about it, I watched a rant on on the SCG Tour one weekend when Patrick Sullivan was doing coverage with Cedric and I was at home. And, they were doing the questions from Twitter. And one of the questions is if you had to ban anything in this format, and that was when Hogak was like, first popping on the scene, what would you ban? And he paused for a second, took a minute or two of his time to really explain why he thought Faithless Looting should get banned because, it's literally a freebie in any deck that has things related to the graveyard. It also just sculpts your hand tremendously. And it's literally at the center of almost every problem deck in the format. If you look at 4 or 5 decks that have been problematic and had a ban over the last 2 or 3 years, Faithless Looting has been the core component of like 3 of them. Mox Opal and Ancient Stirrings have been the cards that kind of see in the other 2, though.
Yeah, definitely has been at the forefront of the format. We're underway here, though. Here's something that's good against Faithless Looting. Turn 1 Thalia for Medvec off of Simian Spirit Guide. Follows up with Tecatli Honor Guard.
Now, you should be familiar with Tecatli Honor Guard if you play a lot of Standard. It's one of the hosers for the Wild Growth Walker package. And the fact that Medvec has actually brought in here leads me to believe that it does stop Narcomoeba from returning Prized Amalgam.
So here's an attack for 3. Whitehouse had no action just yet. He did mulligan to 5. He's at 15. And here's Thalia Heretic Cathar. There you see the Tecatli Honor Guard. Creatures entering the battlefield don't cause abilities to trigger. So this is generic enough wording. That means creatures entering from the library wouldn't trigger, or the graveyard even wouldn't trigger Prized Amalgam.
Right. Now, Sunbaked Canyon is another sweet addition to this Mono Red Eldrazi deck, giving you, effectively as many Horizon Canopies as you are willing to play, as long as that number is less than 8. Or I guess less than 12, but...
Chalice on 1 for Medvec. Whitehouse attempts a Faithless Looting. That one's no good through the Chalice.
I mean, this game was over on turn 1 with the turn 1 Thalia Garden of Thraben. This is going to be as lopsided as it was in game 1, honestly.
And how about Rest in Peace Kicker?
Yeah, okay.
Is 4 cards that you can't beat enough? And it is. Whitehouse will scoop them up.
Legacy. Can we see some Legacy, please? This is not fun to watch.
You'd rather watch Lands?
Yes.
That's a strong statement.
Lands is actually pretty fun when you're playing against blue-based non-combo deck. There's a lot of back and forth, a lot of pivoting and trying to stick threats through Punishing Fire or Jace the Mind Sculptor, versus Punishing Fire. Like, there's a lot of back and forth there. I'm just kidding. Modern's great, but this matchup in particular seems like very lopsided based on who sticks what first.
We have a difference of opinion on what we want to see paired against Lands. I like it when the other player goes Dark Ritual, you're dead. That's what the Lands players deserve, in my opinion.
Wow. Aggressive. I like it.
Played some Storm for a minute. That was my favorite matchup to play.
Yeah. You see here, Whitehouse is actually going back to the drawing board now that he knows that there's white mana in Tom Medvec's deck. He's probably going to be trying to bring in a couple of ways to deal with Rest in Peace, because he also saw that Rest in Peace there from Medvec. So, at least changing 2 or 3 cards here. And he's going to be looking to keep a hand that's slightly bigger than 5 cards, hopefully. But with the new London Mulligan rule, you can toss back like an extra Narcomoeba or Prize Amalgam that you can't really afford to discard at the moment. There's a lot of cards that are way better in the deck than they are in hand.
Yeah, one thing I want to point out about Whitehouse's sideboard, we saw an Abrupt Decay on the sideboard. You mentioned that based off of Game 1, you didn't know if he was playing against colorless Eldrazi. We now see that it's mono white Eldrazi. If you have Assassin's Trophy, it's kind of good regardless if you expect Leyline of the Void, but the Abrupt Decay now he knows is good because of Rest in Peace.
Yeah, absolutely. Not only does it pop Rest in Peace, pops Thalia, Garden of Thraben, Heretic Cathar, even the Tecatli Honor Guards you saw there out the sideboard of Medvec's mono white Eldrazi deck. So Abrupt Decay seems like a fine card here, but he could draw it, and then Medvec just has a draw that features turn 2 Thought-Knot Seer, and then you're kind of stuck with an Abrupt Decay in your hand that doesn't do much. But
yeah, this Mono White Eldrazi deck is bringing a lot of problematic permanents to the table, a lot for the Dredge deck to concern itself with.
oh yeah, for sure.
So we have an update. Our standard match has concluded. Kane Rianhard just ran over that mirror match 2-0.
Yeah, that mirror match is pretty lopsided. If you're on the play and you go like Elf into Fairy Time Raveler and you bounce your opponent's Elf or 2-drop or whatever, the game's just over. It's not over. Like, you can come back, but that tempo swing, coupled with the fact that your opponent can't do anything at instant speed, so you're kind of just left to your own devices, it's pretty tough. Those types of ramp matchups are usually just who hits the battlefield runner first.
Evan Whitehouse is a player that we've seen quite a lot on the tour recently. In 2018, played 12 opens with 2 top 8s, but scale that back all-time, 6 top 8s as well as an invitational top 8. Pretty good resume for the 21-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, when I was 21, I don't know, I qualified for 1 Pro Tour, had no open top 8s because it didn't exist yet. I'm an old man. But impressive stuff from Whitehouse. He's been playing on the tour a while now, like about 2 years, and with 6 open top 8s in 2 years, as well as an invitational top 8, that's an impressive resume.
One of those top 8s was with this very team. Saw them in Baltimore earlier this year. They made the top 8. They were defeated by the team of Hagen, Overturf, and Lynn.
Oh, yeah, that team was pretty good. Wait, did you say Hagen? And Overturf?
I did.
And Lynn?
Yes.
Is your brother on the team? Or?
I do have a brother who has been getting back into Magic because of Magic Arena, which is pretty awesome.
Nice.
He hit Mythic with Mono Red like 1 or 2 seasons ago. Was messaging me about it the whole time, about how easy it was, which I thought was just adorable.
Well, Experimental Frenzy is a messed up Magic card.
That is a fact. And Mono Red, we saw Aaron Barrich win the Week 1 Open last weekend with that, with the Corset dropping.
Yeah, and an interesting take on it, too, just because Chandra Spitfire and a couple other things here. So, an interesting build of it for sure. When everyone's playing ramp effects like Risen Reef, cards like the cards that don't really shine well in the face of removal tend to get a bit better. Mm-hmm. And Chandra Spitfire is definitely one of those cards that can just have an insane amount of burst damage in a spot where you're not really sure, like, if your opponent doesn't have removal or not, like, you can just shove all in. Mm-hmm. If you know they're like just going to be tapping out basically every turn to get more and more mana, and they only have a couple of pieces of spot removal.
Yeah, and stock and Runaway Steamkin also goes up for much the same reason.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, players looking at 7 cards for Game 3. Just going to ask if we could see anybody keep on 7 in this matchup. We know that Whitehouse won't be. He's mulliganing.
Well, looks like Medvec's probably going to keep. I saw Simian Spirit Guide. Probably has a really good turn 1 play, but it might just be like Chalice of the Void, and they're kind of tanking on it. But just conferring with his teammate, one of the coolest parts about these team tournaments is that, if you're unsure about a play or some sort of major decision, you got 2 other buddies that can kind of walk through it with you and make the optimal decision.
Yeah, Chalice on 1 on the draw is an interesting thing to mull over. I think if it's Simian Spirit Guide, rest in peace, that one you hold on to no matter what.
Oh, absolutely. That's probably the best possible. He might even be kind of doing this posturing, to make Evan maybe mulligan to try to find Abrupt Decay or something.
That's something you see some players do.
Yeah, I actually saw it one of the team opens recently. I believe Dom Harvey, and I forget who one of his teammates were. They were like conferring with the hand, and he just was like pointing to a basic land over and over, and then the teammate would just kind of shrug, and he just like, and they were doing like these weird hand motions, and it was just a land. Just kind of trying to throw their opponent off the trail.
One of my favorite moments teaming with Jacob Hagen is he drew an opening 7 one time, and he leaned in like he was asking me what he should do. And he just says to me, "I'm going to bash him." All right, Medvec has kept on 7. Whitehouse now going to 5.
Yeah, but again, mulliganing with decks like Dredge and Tron, when you're doing the London mulligan, it's no longer a huge detriment. You get to get rid of those extra Narc Amoebas. You get to put, excess dredgers back into the deck. There's a lot of cards you don't mind getting rid of. You only need a handful of cards out of Dredge to function, just to get the engine running. And once the engine is running, every card in your hand is usually just getting picked to conflagrate.
Dredge definitely one of the more comfortable decks mulliganing. Whitehouse, a very disciplined player. He's going to mulligan the hands that aren't quite there. But the deck that Medvec has brought to the table is pretty punishing against decks that have mulliganed. Chalice of the Void, Rest in Peace, Thought Knot Seer. These can all be a pretty big issue.
For sure.
It's like we had eyes on a Legacy match for a second. And now Whitehouse is going to look at the opening hand.
All right, we got a keeper. Whitehouse puts 2 on the bottom. He's going to be on the play here for game 3. Let's get to it.
Beginning of game effects, here's Gemstone Cavern exiling Blast Zone.
I bet Whitehouse is pretty happy that pregame effects was not Leyline of the Void.
Right, exactly. Turn 1, Shriekhorn for Whitehouse. We'll see what Medvec can do on the first turn of the game.
Well, Medvec drew Leonin Arbiter, and if he has Ghost Quarter and Simian Spirit Guide, he can actually just blow up Whitehouse's land right now.
There's Simian Spirit Guide. Here's Leonin
I'm
Arbiter.
so smart!
Ghost Quarter. Destroy
So
your
smart.
land. Hope you got another one of those. Copperline Gorge to the graveyard.
Oh, sorry about it, buddy.
Whitehouse would like to search. That is not illegal game action.
You hate to see it.
Unless you pay 2 mana, Leonin Arbiter forbids you to search your library. Here's an activation of the Shriekhorn. Land Cathartic Reunion to the graveyard.
Yep. Any fetch land off the top is also a dead card here, thanks to Leonin Arbiter. So Whitehouse might be having to do this the hard way.
Looking at an upkeep activation here, perhaps, or maybe we're stopped on end step. Not clear.
Maybe a minor infraction or a finger wag from the picking up of the deck, but I think more so the judge just making sure everything's crystal clear, because Leonin Arbiter, cards like that kind of restrict what you're able to do in a game, and it's a static effect, a lot like Narset Part of Veils or Teferi here of Dominaria, and making those like little mistakes when you normally get Ghost Quarter, you're like, okay, I get to go get a land. Here it like stops you. It's like, no, not yet.
All right, so there was no upkeep activation of the Shriekhorn. Stomping Ground tapped is Whitehouse's turn. Medvec will attack for 2 at the Arbiter. Whitehouse to 18.
Ghost Quarter.
Eldrazi Temple Thalia. That's kind of similar to Ghost Quarter.
Yeah. Now every instant or sorcery or even artifact here the Whitehouse wants to play, it's going to cost an additional mana. And after he got hit with that Ghost Quarter, he's pretty light, but finds a second land here.
Still has 2 counters on the Shriekhorn. No action on 2 lands. He'll pass to Medvec.
Looks like you got a Chalice of the Void in hand, maybe a backup Thalia Guardian of Thraben.
An attack for 4 puts Whitehouse to 14. I think just 3 spells in hand. Can't really deploy Chalice meaningfully with 2 mana and a Thalia on his side. He'll pass the turn.
Like Chalice for 0 and pay 1 for it, but not a whole lot of zeros in Whitehouse's deck.
And Whitehouse, no 3rd land. He'll pass. Medvec will attack for 4 again. Whitehouse to 10. Whitehouse going to try to find some Narc Amoebas with this Shriekhorn.
Oh, found a Blood Gas, but not really what the doctor ordered. 4th land here. If this is Thought Knots here, this is bad news for Whitehouse. Even if he did have some sort of answer here, now it's going to get taken away before he's able to draw that 3rd land.
It is Thought Knots here, and it was cast off of a Ghost Quarter. We look at the hand. Life from the Loam, Stinkweed Imp, Golgari Thug, Nature's Claim. What matters among these cards? Stinkweed Imp is chosen.
Yeah, he's just talking it through with Dylan hand right now. I think he's probably going to end up taking Stinkweed Imp because it actually blocks the Thought Knots here quite well, whereas all the other creatures are kind of chump blocking.
Stinkweed Imp goes to exile.
Life Throne also like a really slow card here.
Whitehouse will use the Shriekhorn in upkeep. Conflagrate in a land. Go to the bin.
Well, that still costs 1 more. It needs a 3rd land for that to do anything.
Yeah, light on mana and a little light on cards on hand as well. And yeah, Whitehouse just has to pack it in. Tom Medvec's going to win 2-1 in the Modern seed here. That's going to even up the match score. We just have Legacy left to resolve.
Yeah. Now, That's you may say, well, he's not dead. You know, the Dredge player might not be dead there, but you know they're effectively dead because Medvec's attacking for 8. Whitehouse without that third mana source is not able to do much of anything at all.
All right, our Legacy players are still in Game 1. I'm going to try to catch you up to speed on the battlefield here. For our lands player, we have Glacial Chasm and Tabernacle, so creatures are going to get taxed, and Lancaster can't be dealt damage. We have a True Nemesis with a Batter Skull for Zach Allen, a Narset Porter of Veils on 3.
Narset's kind of interesting. Shuts down those cycling dual lands.
And a Back to Basics as well. So a lot of lands locked down on Lancaster's side. But the Glacial Chasm and the Tabernacle still doing work. Zach Allen, plenty of life at 21.
Can I take back what I said earlier about wanting to watch this match?
I stand by my position.
Oh, man.
Getting confirmation on life total for Lancaster. Looks like a 5. Remember, Glacial Chasm has a cumulative upkeep, a cost of paying life every turn. That does catch up to you unless you can do something fancy. There are some tricks pertaining to Thespian Stage and ways to get lands back from your graveyard, but under Back to Basics, you can't untap enough lands to meaningfully do that.
Yeah. No, Zach Allen there looked like he was pretty far ahead. Back to Basics is quite annoying for the Lance deck. You know, their Rishon ports get shut off. You know, their dual lands that allow them to generate all the excess mana get shut off. Very similar to Blood Moon in that regard, but maybe even better than Blood Moon in that situation.
There are 2 main deck Back to Basics for Zach Allen, definitely paying dividends in matchups like this. His deck list has 6 islands and 3 basic planes.
Yeah, you also saw he had, was it Prismatic Vista?
Yep, 4 of them.
Yeah, these, you know, Azorius decks I think are going to start playing that card a lot. They're fairly reliant on basic lands in general. Mm-hmm. You know, you see them kind of max out on Flooded Strand and fetching up basics with Scalding Tarns and stuff a bunch. Now they just have basically an additional Flooded Strand, but it can't get Tundra.
And Allen only playing 1 copy of Tundra. Definitely endorsing the Prismatic Vista's ability to have access to both basics that you want.
Yeah, absolutely. And in a format like Legacy that's so mana constrained thanks to Daze and Wasteland, you want to make sure that your opponent can't attack your lands too easily, and always fetching up basics as much as possible is a pretty big deal.
And this Stoneblade deck featuring Back to Basics is bringing a lot of stuff to the table that Lancaster is going to have fits over. You know, the Merit Lage token, if you have the Turbo Depths combo, not really that impactful against a Swords to Plowshares deck.
Right.
You're checking all the non-basic lands with the Back to Basics.
Now, kind of tit for tat, Lancaster actually has some pretty heavy hitters in the sideboard himself. 2 copies of Choke can really hurt Zach Allen's development. Tireless Tracker is a great threat that he can potentially bring in to kind of, you know, overload those sorts of Plowshares and things like that. Drop of Honey, that's, I don't remember what that one does.
Drop of Honey is a 1 green mana enchantment.
Right, yeah.
Beginning of upkeep, you destroy the creature with the lowest power.
It's the OG. I was going to say the green periphery nodes, but it came first. I remember Jody Keith was one of the originators of Drop of Honey out of sideboard, and it went. I know it went from like a $10 card to like a $100 card because it has just like never gotten reprinted.
It went from like a $50 card to a $600 card.
Oh.
I think it might be like around 400 right now. There you see Drop of Honey. Not generally the kind of card where the Oracle text is very helpful. I think this one's pretty close. Some nice text in the rules text about there being a tie, allowing you to choose which creature to destroy. But yeah, the creature with the lowest power, and then if there's no creatures on the battlefield, you sacrifice Drop of Honey.
Yeah, it's one of those cards that kind of punishes your opponent for playing a bunch of creatures. And when you pair that with something like Tabernacle, Pendrel Veil, you know, you just, all you're trying to do basically every turn is slow down your opponent's development on the battlefield so that eventually, you know, you let your lands take over.
Maybe we have some HP Drop of Honeys on the sale.
Maybe.
Don't know that
I
don't know that to certainty.
I mean, if a card is from Arabian Nights, chances are it's HP.
That's a very
it's
good point.
Very old. And Drop of Honey is not one of those cards that you would think that someone would, you know, put in like a protective casing 20 years ago. Black Lotus, Mox Emerald, something like that. Yeah, for sure. They would make sure that it stayed crystal clean.
Our Legacy players are keeping 7-card hands. Lancaster on the play with the Windswept Heath. Allen leads on Island Ponder.
Allen actually had some success last weekend in the standard seats. Was playing the standard classic with that Bant ramp that you see both of the Standard players were on, actually took it down in Worcester.
I was talking to Alan about that deck. I said, what are you playing this weekend? He said, I'm playing a Bant control deck. And I asked, there's a lot of Bant ramp decks in the format. What makes your deck a control deck? And he's mentioned some of the cards he's playing. I said, so why is this not a ramp deck? And he said, well, I'm a control player.
Because I have Teferi Time Raveler.
Tapped Tranquil Thicket for Lancaster. Nothing really getting going just yet. Alan's going to sacrifice a Prismatic Vista for a Plains. He's at 19.
You have to imagine if Lancaster has this slow of a start, he's got to have something like Choke or Talus Tracker here on turn 3. You almost always want to cycle that Tranquil Thicket, so you're only going to be playing it when you need it to be your 3rd mana. Or I guess 2nd mana.
Not a long look at the Ponder. It's going to be a shuffle for Alan.
It's another thing about Ponder. I don't think people shuffle nearly enough.
Strongly agree. You got to ask for more.
I mean, it's like, well, sometimes people don't understand that they're just dead if they keep one of the cards on top. And, a string of 2 cards over like back-to-back turns could potentially get you out of it, something like that.
Pickup was Force of Will after the shuffling. On a start like this, that one could be pretty good, especially if you mentioned Lancaster might be building up to a choke.
Lancaster fetching here in the tank. I saw Talus Tracker for sure. See if he's going to cast that or potentially something else. So he might want to play something else first and then deploy the Tracker on a turn where he can play a land in addition to the Tracker and make sure he gets one of those tokens, clue tokens, even in the face of Swords to Plowshares.
So he fetches a 19. Taiga is the find. Amusing element of playing lands in the Legacy seat. You see on Alan's side, his teammates are kind of squatting up, taking a look at the game. Lancaster is all alone. Nobody else knows how to play this deck. Thinking about a tap for 2. In general, in the team events, I like to leave the Legacy player alone.
Yeah, especially in Legacy and Modern, I'm under the impression that, for the most part, whoever is playing their deck knows their deck better than I know their deck.
Looks like Life from the Loam might be the cast here.
I don't feel like that's where you should be at, but... Oh, Renin 6. That's actually a pretty solid threat here. But it looks like he's just going to utilize all of his mana. He's going to tap.
Rashadenport will be the 3rd land. You see Krosan Grip among the holdings. Some pressure to leave that up. He's going to cast Life from the Loam to pick up Windswept Heath. That resolves. Can Alan slam the door with the back to basics here?
Well, it's not really slammed.
Double Stone Rain ain't bad, though. That is back to basics.
Yeah, and that's what Casey Lancaster was playing around. You saw him there. Fetch up the Taiga because he was thinking about playing Renin 6. Kind of, I think, immediately regretted it. And then decided to go with a Life from the Loam instead.
Does have Windswept Heath as land number 4. And I believe he has another land and does have that Krosan Grip. So you're right, he will be able to fight through the first back to basics.
Yeah, but Alan here looks like he's going to resolve a Jace the Mind Sculptor while the shields are down for Lancaster. And start getting those Brainstorms every single turn.
So he fetches 18. There's Jace. Starts with a Brainstorm. Not really pressure from the lands deck to get Jace to a higher loyalty. More cards seems good.
Yeah, and it looks like he found a 2nd copy of Back to Basics as well. So even if Whitehouse finds another land here to play Corrosion Grip, that Back to Basics is going to be pretty bad for him.
Thespian Sage is the land. Passes back to Alan. There's island number 3. He'll Brainstorm with the Jace. Source of Plowshares, Tundra among the pickups. I believe Narset was the 3rd card.
Yeah, his hand looks like it's just stocked with Force of Will, so Lancaster is effectively only going to resolve one more spell for the foreseeable future, and that's going to be Corrosion Grip. But a 2nd copy of Back to Basics to follow it up might be a little rough for Lancaster.
Here's Narset, part of her Veils. Alan knows he put back 2 cards he didn't necessarily want. Swords to Plowshares and the Tundra.
Looks like there's a Force of Negation from Zach Allen's side of things. An interesting addition to this deck, just kind of more copies of Force of Will virtually against combo-centric decks or instant sorcery centric decks.
And he picks up that Force of Negation. That puts him at 7 cards. He'll pass. Instep Lancaster fetches to 18 for a basic Forest. Got to figure we're seeing that Croson Grip here. And there it is. Back to basics. Gone. That's got split second. The Force of Negation is no good there.
Yeah, but if the only real follow-up that Lancaster can have here is something like Dark Depths and make a 20/20, because everything else is going to get countered by those Force Negations and Force of Wills.
Going to the draw step here. He does still have that life from the Loam in the graveyard. He will take a natural draw. Looks like Choke was picked up. He knows about Force of Negation, but that is a pretty high-impact spell. He's going to cast it.
Yeah, I think this is going to eat a Force of Negation. And then I think he has a land and a second Choke, and I think that's also going to get hit.
It's actually just going to be Force of Will pitching Jace the Mind Sculptor for Allen. Force of Negation is a little cheaper to cast, I suppose.
Sure.
He'll fall to 17 for that. Choke goes to the graveyard. Thespian Stage is the land for turn.
And bad news for Lancaster. He's going to cast another 3-mana spell here. It's also going to get countered. Then Allen's going to untap and play another back to basics.
Some pause on whether to cast a spell here. He's tapped and untapped, but I think he's locked it in now.
I think you have to. In the face of 2 Planeswalkers here, you just need to try to do something.
It's a second attempt at Choke. Allen with 5 cards in hand, one of them a known Force of Negation.
Yeah, I think he wants to counter this in some way or another. He's going to go with Force of Will.
Pitches a Snapcaster Mage to 16, so Lancaster still just knows about that Force of Negation. We go to Allen.
It's important to note that Force of Negation versus the card Life from the Loam, very good because it exiles.
Allen will activate the Narset. See a Brainstorm, a Disenchant as the 2 options. True Nemesis and a Plains, the other cards. Brainstorm selected.
Yeah, he's already gotten rid of 2 chokes, so the Disenchant's not nearly as effective. Probably just going to play back to basics. Brainstorm with Jace and pass turn after the back to basics resolves.
Here's Brainstorm with Jace. Finds a Disenchant this way.
Looks like he also picked up a Celestial Purge. That seems like it's good against the Merit Lodge token from Dark Depths. Zach Allen getting dangerously close to locking this one up.
Puts 2 back, plays an island. Here's a tap of 3. Back to basics, number 2. Lancaster is not even interested in playing. That's going to do it. Team of Allen, Medvec, and Hayes.